Hello, Shaka.
Hello, Paul.
Welcome to Shaka Extra Time.
Great to be, of course, on Shaka Extra Time again.
Last week when we had this discussion, it was in the middle of an election taking place here. Finally, people got to vote, their voices got heard, and some people are happy, some people are not happy. What really happened that day on Tuesday, November the 2nd?
It is very
November 8th, yeah.
It is very difficult, frankly, to put your fingers on one thing or two or three. It looks like a lot of things that probably were not meant or expected to happen actually did happen. First of all, to be very honest with you, from all indications, if you were to look at the public opinion polls, if you were to look at the mainstream media, and majority of Americans actually, you expected to have a victory, at least in terms of the electoral college votes, in the corner of the Democratic Party flag bearer, Hillary Clinton. You also expected probably to have a very, very close race. What happened, of course, was the opposite did happen in terms of the electoral college votes, but guess what? The popularity vote is on the other side. In fact, Hillary Clinton has more than probably 1 million votes, much more than the guy who is going to be the next president of the United States.
What kind of a message does this send to, especially to maybe our African audience, where you have, they look at the U.S. as the beacon of democracy, and here you have the process itself is not democratic. You have somebody winning a popular vote, but they can't win the presidency. How would you explain that to an ordinary person in Africa?
You can't say that the process is not democratic simply because in order for you to win the White House, you have to win the electoral college votes rather than the popular votes. Every candidate in the game understands that. Nobody is complaining that somebody either rigged or shifted the goalposts or came up with some sort of creative accounting. No. These are the rules of the game. It has happened 5 times in the history of this country, which obviously has been in place since 1776. And interestingly, it has actually affected Democratic Party flag bearers since 2000. The first one, of course, in 2000 being then Vice President Al Gore against George W. Bush. And now, of course, in 2016, you have another Democratic Party flag bearer, Hillary Clinton, winning the popular vote but losing the White House. But let's face it, there are certain dynamics, I think, that were very much overlooked. For once, really, you have the group of people that a former and, of course, late President of the United States, Richard Nixon, used to refer to as the silent majority of America. And for the most part, these were people in the Midwest, what they call Middle America, and parts of the Southwest, of America. You have a situation, for example, when Richard Nixon appoints a man called Dr. Henry Kissinger, a man from New York City, who used to be a professor at Harvard and what have you. He appoints him to become his Secretary of State when he was replacing Mr. Rogers, and he had, of course, been his national security advisor. And he says, Henry, I would like to warn you that you should not address a lot of press conferences because your accent does not play in Oklahoma. It does not play in Middle America. Guess what? It is that Middle America that, in fact, handed the presidency to Donald Trump. They voted in droves. As far as they are concerned, for them, they were voting against the establishment. They were voting against Washington and probably anybody, frankly, associated with it. Because as far as they are concerned, for the last 4 years, they have not seen anything better in their life. So if Obama, for example, asked them, are you better off today than you were 4 years ago, it would be interesting to what they would say. But if you looked at the election results, obviously they would probably say, we are less better off than we were 4 years ago. Ironically, Obama still remains a very popular president, even though he's a lame duck. We're talking about a man whose approval rating is about 54%, Paul.
But does that matter? The guy didn't deliver. I mean, he's a sitting president. He was campaigning for a very popular candidate, but he didn't deliver. So does that matter whether he's popular or not?
I think it matters as far as his presidency is concerned. The problem, of course, is how come he cannot, for example, pass on that popularity as an individual to someone else? But then again, look at Hillary Rodham Clinton. She had her own baggage. If you looked at those emails, Paul, I mean, let's face it, people talk about the director of the FBI, Comey, that perhaps he shouldn't have come up with that letter that he did with about 2 weeks just before the election. But then earlier in July, when he made a statement sort of exonerating Hillary Clinton, guess what? Most Democratic Party people called him a gentleman. They called him a professional. They called him all sorts of incredible platitudes, really. But when he came up with that letter, my friend, it was very interesting. It was now the turn of the Republicans calling him professional, calling him a gentleman, a man who is doing his job, an independent-minded person, the type of person that America needs. Because you know what? The President of the United States is not as strong, for example, as the President of Nigeria or the President of any African country for that matter. What is very strong here and what is very important here are American institutions.
But speaking about American institutions, there are people, critics who have come out and said that what he did was perhaps something short of abuse of power, because he literally came in at a time when this whole thing was happening, and he might have swayed the election towards the opponent, Donald J. Trump.
You know, the interesting thing here is that people are entitled to their different opinions, but certainly not their different sets of facts. The fact of the matter is, as I said, America is run by institutions, not the presidency. You have heard, for example, that the Department of Justice was not on the same page with him. But you have also heard that there were staffers in the FBI. If he didn't come up with, take that step, they probably would have leaked the information anyway. And in fact, if they had leaked it, it probably would have even caused more damage to Hillary Rodham Clinton than it probably did.
So what does that say about the institution itself? Is the institution stable, as you say, or it's on shaky grounds?
The institution is stable because what happened? I mean, after complaining, what happened actually? Life went on. There's nothing that, for example, the Attorney General could have done to a director who reports to him, or the President, who is the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of the United States.
But Hillary Clinton has come out and, among other things, she has said that that announcement by the FBI director probably had everything to do with her losing the election. Your thoughts on that?
First of all, the key word is probably, because I don't see any facts here. Besides, let's face it, if that Hillary Rodham Clinton hadn't sent those emails to her private server, which were in fact sometimes being received by, I think, someone who is a worker in her house, obviously in some way, shape or form, accessing otherwise stuff that was deemed to be classified, then we would not in fact have even heard the director of the FBI coming out with a statement. It was first and foremost a mistake committed by Hillary Clinton, and she has apologized for that. So frankly, I think she's just looking for someone else to blame, because there are a lot of people who claim, at least those who know her very much over the last 30 years, that she has been in, in politics and what have you, that she's one of those people that always looks for someone else to blame for something else. She kind of like looks for, what do they call it?
Shaka, before the elections, on that election day, you and I were talking here, and we in fact joked about it. You put your money on Hillary Clinton. You actually predicted a big win for Hillary Clinton. And you are not alone. The entire media establishment here outside, their own pollsters, even Trump's pollsters, showed that Clinton was going to win. What happened?
First of all, let's face it, I think I should apologize for the fact that I made a wrong call. But I made a wrong call based on what was available to me. Whatever was available to me, as it was available to almost every other person, is what I had to use in order to make that prediction. And interestingly, the prediction was certainly not right on the money. Let's face it, there had also been talk around that there was a sort of silent majority, that there were supporters of Mr. Trump who were not courageous enough to come out in the public and say that is the person they supported, because if they said it, somebody would probably look down upon them, really. In fact, there is a colleague that I met in the corridor after that interaction I had with you. I asked him, I said, hey, John, who are you going to vote for? He said, well, to be very honest with you, if I had my way, I'd probably sit this one out. I said, why? He said, I don't see, frankly, anyone deserving here. But I think I'll go for at least the one who is not crazy. I said, so who is crazy? He said, you know who I am talking about. Of course, he never said exactly who he thought was crazy. But a lot of people would have probably told you that it is a man now called Donald Trump, president-elect.
Shaka, you are a man of your word, and I will take you up on that. Your apology accepted. In fact, I have comments. A lot of people wondering what really happened. They wanted you to respond to that. The fact that you've responded to that, I will accept your apology, and let's move on.
And of course, I owe you, I probably owe you a meal on that.
Absolutely,
correct?
You bet on that.
But then again, let's face it, I remember you teasingly asked me as to why did I think that Trump winning was impossible. Sincerely, I remember saying, no, it may be difficult, but not impossible. But based on what I can see, he seems to have only one path to the magic number of 270. And Clinton, on the other hand, it looked like from everything we had multiple paths or ways to the magic number. And guess what? By about midnight, Paul, when I'm looking at television, the guy that is very close to the magic number is Donald Trump, not Clinton. In fact, on that note, I decided to go and sleep. Only to wake up to be told that it was Pennsylvania that put Trump on top, 274.
Let's look at the inner dealings of these, the Republicans and the Democrats. Some people, some critics who are now attacking the Democrats say that maybe they forgot about Middle America. They really didn't care about what happened in Middle America. They only concentrated on urban areas, urban cities. And Trump went for the kill. That's where most of the people are. If you make a comparison, let's say, to any country in Africa, most voters are rural voters. As compared, opposition candidates usually win in big cities, but when it comes to rural areas, the regime ends up winning. So would you draw that kind of comparison to what happened here?
Well, let's face it. First of all, we should probably talk a little bit about what happened in the United Kingdom. We are talking about Brexit. Look at the kind of demographics that in fact made Brexit possible in the United Kingdom. You know, some people said that maybe the United States election could actually borrow a leaf from the United Kingdom. And a lot of others said, no, that can't happen because this country is very diverse. And this country is very diverse, there's no question about it. But guess what? If you look at the percentage of the Hillary Clinton supporters who actually went to the polls or who cast the vote, you can begin to understand why she could not win. Because in fact, if they had gone out and voted for her, there is no question in anybody's mind that she would have won. Why didn't they go to vote? She did not energize them, some people have argued. Her support was not very enthusiastic. Whereas the support of Donald Trump, they were basically, ready to kill, really. Because they rejected everything, as far as they are concerned, that was in place. They wanted something new. They wanted a change. And to be honest with you, they did not feel that Clinton represented change. On the other hand, they looked at Trump as an outsider and as somebody, frankly, who could be an agent of change. You see, Clinton was a very sophisticated candidate. If you looked at the optics, for example, you looked at the way she was talking and what have you, oh God, I mean, she was terrific. She was in a totally different league. If you looked, on the other hand,
she was the heir apparent. Obama handed her the mantle.
In a sense, but again, when you look at, you know, the fact that she was the first lady at one time to her husband, who was president at the time, Bill Clinton. If you looked at the fact that she was Secretary of State with that plane going all over the world, logging millions and millions of miles, meeting all sorts of people. If you look at the fact that she has been in politics for the last 30 years and played very, very significant roles at different levels, when, on the other hand, you look at a guy like Donald Trump, despite being a mighty billionaire, he has actually never even held local council office. He has never held any elected office that you can talk about. But guess what? The first elected office the man is in fact going to hold is arguably the most important political office in the world. 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, the White House, is probably the most important political address globally.
Let's go to comments. And the first comment, some of your viewers want to know the difference between electoral colleges and a popular vote. This person is saying that take any country, for example, for anybody to win in Africa, for anybody to win the presidency, they win usually the majority vote, or it's usually 50+1. But in this particular case, it's about electoral college. Can you explain that to our people?
Yeah, first of all, it is not only limited to the one who the one who wins the most votes, really, or 50+1. It can also, for example, be proportional representation. Like in South Africa, they do not vote for a president. They vote for a party. The party or the coalition of parties that hits the magic number that gives them the authority to rule or to govern chooses or appoints a president. In fact, even for parliament, you do not run for parliament. It is the parties that choose people who become members of parliament based on the percentage, the proportional percentage of the vote that they have gotten. Now, we talked about the electoral vote, the electoral college vote, last time, really. We've been talking about this all the time. The fact of the matter is it's a sort of proportional representation. It was meant for the bigger states, in a sense, not really to kind of like take advantage of the smaller states. For example, California is the single largest state in the United States of America. In fact, it has more people than the entire state of Canada. Now, California has 55 electoral college votes. What does that mean? Translation, it means it has 53 members of the United States House of Representatives, Congress, plus 2 senators. It makes it 55. If you go to Wyoming, on the other hand, which probably has in the neighborhood of 600,000 people, it has 3 electoral college votes. What does that mean? It means that it has 1 member of the U.S. House of Representatives plus 2 senators. It makes it 3. So basically, an electoral college vote is really a reflection of how many Congress people you have in your state and how many senators you have in your state. Now, the way it works in terms of the Senate is that it does not matter whether your state is numerically very, very significant in terms of people, or whether it has very few people. You have equal shares, equal numbers of senators. Each state has 2 senators. Wyoming has 2 senators, so does California with 55 with 2 senators. Whereas with a majority vote, you could in fact win in 1 state. That majority vote, in fact, for Hillary, that majority vote might well have come from the state of California, where there are so many Hispanics and who happen to vote Democratic.
Let's go to another commenter from Nigeria, David Samuel from Nigeria. He says, should a genuine immigrant with legal papers be afraid of Trump's presidency, or only illegal immigrants? Seems like both to me.
I don't think so. First of all, this was a campaign, Paul. You see, when people are campaigning, I've often said that they campaign in poetry. They promise, for example, heaven on earth. But when they actually get to the business of governing, that one, my friend, they have to look at the obtaining political reality. And so some people say they, in fact, govern in prose. So, yes, the man will have said a lot of things in a campaign because it is marketing yourself, really. It's like marketing a product. But the fact of the matter is, when he comes to do governing, you do not govern using sound bites. That one is about making consultations. The President of the United States, for example, must consult with a lot of experts. He has to consult with, members of the other organs of the government of the United States, because the government of the United States is not on 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue.
There is Joseph Sebo from Uganda. Can you relate U.S. elections to what you've seen in Uganda or in any other African country? Do you think the Western media behaved like the media in third world countries and they owe Trump an apology?
Well, to be very honest with you, first of all, there is, of course, a sort of disconnect. I think this election demonstrated that very, very effectively, that there is a disconnect between Middle America and the establishment, including the fourth estate, which is mainstream media. The beauty of this, though, is that you now have social media, which in some ways complements and supplements mainstream media. So I think that the terrain is going to change, especially with the emerging changing of demographics and social media. Things are going to change completely. People are going to be reading society very differently, much differently than they have done that before. But you see, in the United States of America, government does not control the media. Unfortunately, in most of Africa, governments do control the media. And most journalists, as much as they may be good people and meaning well, sometimes they end up really being beneficiaries of brown envelopes. They end up being tempted to be on somebody's payroll, and therefore compromised and cease to become serious reporters or serious journalists, for that matter. They end up, in fact, becoming sort of public relations agents of the people that, put them on their payroll. Whereas in the United States, you have a sense of professionalism as a journalist. I think a lot of people may have gotten it wrong, but it's not because it was deliberate, or it's not because, they wanted it to happen. I think there were certain circumstances that they were able to misread. But even then, when you look at it, let's face it, again, you have Hillary Clinton winning the popularity vote, even though she does not win the Electoral College. So in a sense, yes, did they make a mistake? They did. But on the other hand, if you look at the fact that in most battleground states, for example, the margin of victory between Trump and Hillary Clinton was so close. For example, in Michigan, really. If she only had gotten like a little bit more, in fact, she scored much less than people who voted for Barack Obama 4 years ago in places like Flint, in places like, Detroit, where you have African-American voters and all kind of stuff. Some of them didn't go because they thought she was going to win.
Yeah, Shaka, we are running out of time. We have one commenter from Charles Samuhumuza in Rwanda. He says it's a very big lesson to African leaders. African leaders need to stay in... I repeat. It's a very big lesson to Africa. Leaders need to stay in power for centuries. The era of the British and the Bush and the Clintons is timely and will be kicked out. Secondly, America is a superpower that needs a man, not a woman, in making very hard decisions. I personally don't agree with what he says. Your take?
I don't agree with that too. I think that I am one of those people that told Ugandan Prime Minister Dr. Ruhakana Rugunda about a year ago when he told me someone had suggested to him that the next president would probably be Hillary Rodham Clinton because that person had assured him that she would be the Democratic Party flag bearer and that perhaps on the Republican side it would end up being Jeb Bush and that the two would meet and that it would be Hillary Clinton. I remember in fact telling him that yes, she looks like she could have advantages, but America is such a country that perhaps the country will be needing change. They will be looking for someone else. And I also quickly added that I was not sure that America was ready for a female president. But there are a lot of people who have said or suggested that, in fact, America may very well be ready for a female president, but not for a female president whose name is Hillary Rodham Clinton because of her baggage.
Okay, finally, Shaka, what are you talking about tomorrow on Straight Talk Africa?
Tomorrow we're going to be looking at the largest nation, Africa south of the Sahara, the Democratic Republic of the Congo, through a book called Beyond the Storm, written by an American physician by the name William Close, who in fact is a father of another famous Close, a name called Glenn Close, a famous Hollywood actress. If you watched Fatal, was it?
Attraction.
Yeah?
Fatal Attraction.
Yes, she was the key. And the man went to the Democratic Republic of Congo, which was then the Belgian Congo, in May 1960 on a missionary assignment for 6 weeks. Interestingly, he ended up being in that country for 16 years, including very, very close, and in fact, a personal physician of Marshal Mobutu Sese Seko and his family. It's a very interesting book because it takes you along a very interesting, controversial, intriguing, but interesting journey of a country that got independence on June 30th, 1960.
Well, thank you so much, Shaka, once again for joining us today. We look forward to seeing you again next week. And for now, so long from Washington.
You're most welcome.